Matters is a buzzword we hear all the time, from books in our libraries, as we have discussed, to teachers in our classroom, as Dean is representing. But where is representation when we are in the voting booth? Devin, why are queer political figures so important?
Well, nobody's going to look after you like your own people for the most part, because we know some of our skin folk ain't our kinfolk. But for the most part, um, you can expect that people who have similar experiences as you are going to prioritize the issues you're concerned about, right? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're concerned about funding for HIV services, the person that's probably going to be the most concerned about that are someone who comes from a community that is most impacted by that, which is us. If you are concerned about, trans kids being able to get the gender affirming care that they need, then trans representatives are going to care more about that in a way that there are cisgender representatives who have voted against that, and rightfully so, and they don't deserve a cookie for that. That's their job. But the level of passion and being able to bring the experiences that we know that we have daily is going to only really come from a person that has walked in similar shoes and on similar streets that you have. And so that's why representation matters, but it's also not everything, because just because someone is queer doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable. That doesn't mean that sometimes they can't vote the wrong way. That doesn't mean that sometimes they're out of touch with the experiences in our community. But representation is something that matters to an extent. I wouldn't say it's the only thing that matters, because we have Black elected officials that don't always look after Black people. With every Black mayor that we've gotten in Atlanta, we've had less Black people be able to afford to live here, right? And so that is something that we got to contend with, right? So representation doesn't necessarily mean everything, but it means something.
Okay, I think that's a perfect segue to my next question for you, Dean. Is what I again, I've contended that the two of you are very, very politically aware. And so, what do you believe is the expectation of us lay people when we go to the voting booth? Are we supposed to read every bill? Are we supposed to research every candidate? How informed should we be?
I say you should be informed on your bills that you are having that's being passed. You should definitely be informed on the people that represent you. A lot of the times we always talk about things that's going wrong in our community, but it's because we vote for everybody with a D behind them, behind their name. And just like Devin said, just because they have a D behind their name does not mean they are uh, representing you. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we are,
Mm-hmm.
within the Democratic Party, you have moderates, you have liberals, you have and anything in between. So you have to make sure that that person has a background of supporting you as a people. Um, you want to make sure the bills that's being passed aren't infringing on you as a person. So you have to be educated in who you're voting for and what you're voting for. I think taking a day to research bills that's going to be on the ballot and to research candidates is important. People always talk about, well, how did we get here? Why do we got these bad candidates? Well, did you vote in your primary? Did you get out and did you, I tell people, did you volunteer for those local elections? You can volunteer for local elections, state elections, or state people, and national campaigns. You can go into those. They have small spaces where they have like house visits where people go into houses and these candidates talk to them. You can ask those questions instead of waiting until the voting day to be like, oh, I don't know who to vote for. Or this person says D. This sounds like a black. I've heard people say this. This sounds like a black person. Now let me go vote for them.
I've done that.
Literally.
If we see anything from North Carolina's Republican nominee that they got right now, that's a black man that said black people don't deserve reparations, and I wish we can go back to the old days. That should tell you that everybody that look like us is not for us.
Yeah, they're
Um,
about to have Uncle Ruckus as governor of North Carolina if people don't
correct,
vote the right way in November.
correct.
The
But there
interesting
are.
thing is the to the other side, there are many black people on the ballot that do not like. I would never think Tim Scott is a black man,
That's
never.
true.
But
You
he
know,
is, and
he's got black skin.
he's
He's
cozying up
got
to 45.
he's got black skin. I don't know if he is fully immersed in the black experience, because people can remove themselves from that, especially when you get to certain levels of power. A U.S. senator, you can remove yourself from the black experience. he wasn't elected to represent a black issues in South Carolina. Ain't nobody black in South Carolina really supporting Tim Scott. It's white business elite folks who and rednecks who have decided that this black man can do our bidding because that's what they tried to do with Herschel Walker in Georgia, and he couldn't read
Right,
and write.
right, right.
So I want to go back to something you said, Dean. You said take a day to,
Mhm.
because I think that is critical. That's a big call to action that you're putting out. Take a day and research what is on the ballot in your area. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. I can tell people my mayor of my city of Brookhaven is John Park. I know that for a fact. My city council person is Jennifer Owens, and that stuff matters because those are my local people. They are in charge of my day to day life. Local and state elections are in charge of your day to day life. We all saw when President Obama tried to send stuff to Republican states, and Republican governors was like, "We don't want that. We're sending it
Medicaid
off."
expansion, things like that.
Correct. So
Mhm.
yes, you might have voted for a black president who had your best interest at heart, but you allowed that white Republican to still
Mhm.
sit in office. And the reason why you can't get this extra Medicaid funding, or why you can't get extra funds to education, why you can't get funds to, I mean, look at Michigan right now, and look at Detroit and the whole water situation. Well, Flint and the whole water situation. That's
You know, I was
years.
born in Flint.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's years of putting people in place that don't have your best interest at heart, even though they might look like you.
Can I give some resources for folks? So if you want to research your elections, you don't have to just go and Google blindly. Like there are well-respected organizations that
Right.
put voter guides out there, like ACLU of Georgia or whatever state that you're in, the ACLU. They usually put out a voter guide before the primary election and the general election. Working Families Party is going to put out a voters guide. If you're here in Atlanta and you're concerned about affordable housing, Housing Justice League puts out a voter guide on who's the best on housing issues and affordable housing and home ownership and things of that nature. The NAACP in some places has a voter guide. So like many of these civic organizations, all you have to do really is just Google voter guide in your city and then just look at the different voter guides. And from there, we're not asking people to go and like look up these things blind.
Hmm.
There are resources out there that's available to you that can help you in your research around what are the issues that are going to be on the ballot and where do these people stand on the issues? Because what I like to say is we're not beholden to any party, particularly as Black people. We don't have permanent friends or enemies. We've got permanent interests. So, like, whoever is going to represent the interests of Black folks, of LGBTQ folks, regardless of what letter they have by their name, that's who you need to be prioritizing and spending most of your attention on.
And
I,
that is the most important thing that we as a people need to realize, especially if we're when we're going to the ballot, is that it's our interest. If we allow people who don't have our best interest to continue to run our country, like when you have those people that say, "I'm just going to stay home for the election," well, then don't get mad when the person that does not have your best interest wins, and then they start taking away your rights. Okay, that's what people were saying about a lot of the women, specifically white women, who stayed home, or they decided to vote third party, and then now their rights are going for what 4 or 5 years later. Well, you can't blame anybody but yourself because you decided that you wanted to stay home, or you wanted to protest, do a protest vote. I tell people right now we're at a point right now in this country where we don't have that luxury.
Yeah,
Okay.
this I would say that primaries right now, what people are doing in Michigan, what people are attempting to do in Georgia to vote uncommitted, they're still showing up and voting, but they're sending a signal to President Biden that listen, if you don't end this war and stop sending billions of dollars over to Ukraine and billions of dollars over to Gaza to inflame a genocide and make things more expensive here, we're not going to vote for you. We're not going to show up. In the Biden administration, it's their job to listen to people and say, well, the people who put me in office are saying to stop doing this. And the only way that we can really show that we're serious right now is during these presidential primaries. The strategy in Michigan was that Biden only won Michigan by 150,000 votes. So if 100,000 people say, hey, we're not too sure about you, the president needs to listen. Georgia, he only won Georgia by 12,000 votes. If 10 or 8,000 people decide to stay home because they're tired of this war, we're going to be in trouble. And so the president, if he wants to win, that's what most people who run for public office, I know When I ran for public office, I wanted to win. And so the best thing that you can do to win is listen to the people who have to vote for you.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect place to take a break. After the break, we want to hear from you. Drop your questions in the comments, and we will ask the guests live on the show. The best question on YouTube and IG is going to win big. We will be right back.
Did you know that there are more than 38.4 million people living with HIV globally? Or that 13% of people who have HIV in the US don't know it? Did you know that there are HIV vaccine clinical trials throughout the US to find a vaccine that can stop HIV? Or that they need volunteers? Learn more about how you can help at helpendhiv.org.
Hey teammates, welcome back to Dear Black Gay Men Podcast. Before the break, we told y'all to drop your questions in the comments. Chiago, I see him there. Chiago has picked the best question on YouTube. Chiago. My buttons ain't working. Hold on.
I think it's too much of that bottle. That what bottom bottle or whatever.
I don't know if it's the bottle. I don't know. Chiago, what's the question for Burning Questions? Is it up there?
I think it says.
Is it coming? That ain't me. Just FYI. And while we're talking about the bottle, I only drank a little bit as I hit the ice bucket. We got a question coming, Chiago? Okay, no worries. So, if there was a parting call to action from both of you, what would be what do you want people to have taken away from this conversation? Devin, I'll start with you.
I was hoping you weren't going to start with me. So a couple of things. Like we have the country that we're willing to fight for. We have the country that we're willing to work for, right? If we have a country where inflation is gone crazy, where gasoline and groceries are really expensive, we can't just continue to ask politicians, how did we get here? We have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? How do we allow ourselves to be taken for this ride? Is it because we are not really paying attention to what's going on in the community? Are we allowing ourselves to be distracted by things that don't necessarily really change the conditions that we live in day to day? And so we have to ask ourselves, what's our commitment to the communities and the country that we want to live in? I want to live in a country where we're reclaiming our future, where we are reclaiming our future from corporate greed, where we're reclaiming our future for affordable housing, where people know what it's like to be able to not live in this massive amount of debt. I want to reclaim our future from the scourge of the HIV epidemic. I want to reclaim our future from racism and all of this ridiculousness that we have wasted so much time with. We've spent so much time on racism. Like, could you imagine what we would be able to do if we didn't have to waste our time with that anymore, with systemic racism? And so that's just a question that I have to people who are watching is like, what are you willing to do beyond just voting? Like, are you going to show up to the city council meeting? Are you going to ask one of your friends, create a buddy system? Okay, like this week I go to the city council meeting and I report back to my neighborhood what happened, because everybody can't go. But like, we got to start getting creative, because on the other side, they're organized, right? We're seeing what a 50-year organizing strategy around reducing abortion access, around changing the education system so that we try and change the history of what actually has happened in this country. We're seeing it. We're seeing it. We're seeing it. We're seeing it. Where wages are going down, but everything is going up. And so we have to ask ourselves, what type of country and communities do we want to live in? And so I'll end there. And then I have news that I'll be sharing more in depth, but I'm going to be a candidate for Atlanta City Council this year for a special election to replace a Black lesbian woman, Keisha Waits, who recently resigned from the Atlanta City Council to seek higher office. I actually used to be her chief of staff. And so I'm really excited to be able to talk with folks about all of these issues and much more about what's impacting Atlanta and the type of city that we want to be, because I really think that like we're fighting for our future, y'all, like not trying to be, cliche, but we really are in a fight for our future. And I think that we can win. We deserve to win. So
is that an exclusive?
That's an exclusive. I said that here.
Did you
Yeah,
just announce your candidacy on Dear Black Gay Men
I did. I did. I
podcast?
did. I did. I did. I
I
did. I
just
mean,
love that so much. I hope you can follow that up with something good, Dean, because he just dropped a bombshell.
so Dean, you running for mayor of Brookhaven? What's up?
No, I'm not running for mayor of Brookhaven. I wish I was though.
Real quick, let's give that some breath though. That is
Yes.
amazing. That is absolutely amazing news that you are running for city council. What seat in the Atlanta City Council is that?
So it's post 3 at large. So it's a citywide seat. So everybody in the city of Atlanta will be able to vote in this election. And it will actually more than likely be on the November ballot with the presidential election, which is unusual because usually city elections are not the same year as presidential elections. And so more people than usual will be voting in this race. And so I'm really excited to be talking with people from now until November about how we fix the city, because Atlanta is a great city, but it's a city with a lot of problems. And part of the problem is that we got the wrong people in these seats. We got people who are too casual about, the problems that are going on in the city. We're too comfortable with the fact that Atlanta is the #1 city for racial inequality in the country. That's a shame. How we the Black Mecca, but then we the #1 city in the country for racial inequality? That makes no sense. And it's because we have Black folks who have rested on their laurels, who are colluding with Republicans at the state government to give away billions of your dollars in taxpayer money to people who don't need it. They're about to give a tax break to Elon Musk for a facility that he's going to open here in Georgia. That could be teaching these babies how to read. That could be making sure that kids don't have to worry about whether or not they got to pay for their lunch at school. That could be making sure that we're actually building real affordable housing. But they're taking your money that's supposed to be for the public interest and putting it in billionaires' pockets. And you should be upset about that. I know I am. So if you're asking why everything is expensive, you need to be asking, am I going to show up and vote in this election? And am I going to show up and vote for people who have a history of fighting in this for us in this community? And my history is unquestioned. And so I'm excited to represent us on the Atlanta City Council, because it's time we send a fighter down there who's going to fight for us. Yeah.
I will tell you that I am excited for the I don't want to call it a battle ahead, but I am excited for the journey that you are undertaking. That is exciting.
Thank
Dean,
you.
I have a different question for you.
Okay.
There is a question from the comments. Mr. _Professor 411 said on Instagram. He said, "At what point should compromise be a part of the equation when voting?"
I don't think you should compromise anything that you see as a issue. You think we should be compromising with inflation right now? Absolutely not. Most people right now can't even afford to put gas in their tank, pay their bills, and do daycare at the same time. We are it's a lot going on. So I don't think we should compromise anything when voting. I think what we want as a whole, as a community, is what we should be pushing for as a community. What's the problem is I feel like as a community we haven't galvanized in a long time to say this is what we want, this is what we expect, this is what we want from our candidates, this is what you need to give us when we're voting for you. So right, I mean, to me at the moment we're compromising already. We've been compromising for the last 3-4 elections when voting. So we need to stop compromising. And I mean, this election right now is a little too late, but I feel like going into 2026, 2028, we need to be talking about what we want right now. I see people this mass push for reparations. Well, if we're pushing for reparations, we need to get serious about it.